One of our regular contributors from CanStar, Editor-at-Large, Effie Zahos. How are you, Effie?
I'm very well, thanks.
Well, look, for people like you and I who like the economic topics regularly, we've got some more interest these days in the Reserve Bank meetings and inflation data releases, particularly on Wednesday.
Yeah, look, I feel we have all become so interested in these economic indicators now. I mean, I can tell you I've been talking money for a good almost 20, 30 years, and I've never seen Aussies so interested or so excited to see what these numbers come out, because let's face it, we're all feeling it. I guess we don't need to be told, what the inflation numbers are, because whether you're filling up at the pump or you're shopping, whether it's food, clothing, whatever the case may be, we know prices have gone up, and it seems to be one impact after another. If it's not geopolitical risks or factors, it's floods, it's interest rate hikes, it's supply chain issues. Everything that can possibly go wrong has gone wrong, and this is what we're seeing now, the fallout. And we are expecting inflation numbers to be pretty high. I mean, looking at what economists are saying, probably we're going to see a 6.2, 6.3. I would not be surprised if it's a little bit more. But what will come out today, no doubt the RBA will be looking very, very closely, because the ramifications from here is how more aggressive will the RBA be if these inflation numbers are very high.
Yeah, and the Australian Food and Grocery Council CEO Tanya Barden's indicated she thinks it'll be closer to a 7 as well. And whilst interest rates is one thing that is a reason they watch these things closely, it's also had a benefit for people on, the lowest wages as well. It's driven up the award rates for the people on the lowest incomes in Australia.
Yeah, it is. And I'm glad you raised that, because we do hear about a lot of pain from mortgage holders. And I get that. Some of us are going to be in a great position where, stash money in our re-draws, we can handle these. We've got the buffers. There's a lot of us, remember, that probably took out huge mortgages. Prices were really high in 2021 when the RBA was saying, hey, rates won't go up until 2024. They're the ones that are actually going to get the pain. But remember, only about a third of us have a mortgage. And a third rent, so to speak, and the others don't. So, when rates go up, you're absolutely right. You've got the other side of the fence where people on fixed income are thinking, finally, I'm getting some return for my savings and investings. And that's good news too. It gives them a bit more purchasing power. And as you say, you've got the wage prices as well. But this is the interesting thing where the RBA is in a real tough spot. It all comes down to kind of, demand and supply. And by increasing interest rates, the idea is that people will stop spending and won't put so much inflationary pressure on things. But this is not just a demand problem. It's a supply problem, as I said before, and they can't really control that. And if you have wages going too far up, then it kind of counteracts the rate increases. So they've got to find that right area, that kind of middle ground, because also you don't want to suppress demand too, because then you start talking about what you're hearing is a recession. If interest rates are so high and the cost of money is high and people don't spend because they know that, I can't for whatever reason, that pulls prices down. People hold off because they think, prices will go down. So you can see how hard this vicious cycle is.
Yeah, and people watch these, I think, if they've got longer memories, maybe the older generation, the Reserve Bank meetings and announcements of percentage point increases in interest rates, because they remember the recession and the double-digit interest rates we had. And I don't think we're getting anywhere near that. But it's funny, isn't it? How is it do we have a recession now versus the recession we had in the Keating era, but we're not seeing those really high interest rates that we had back then?
No, we're not. And this is because it's that fine line. If the RBA goes too aggressive, and I'm already seeing data about people pulling back on their spending, and the beauty about being in a digital economy is that it's pretty instant. You can just look at what's happening with cards, debit payments, credit payments, and so on. Spending has pulled back a little bit. So if these inflation numbers come out really hard today, then there is talk maybe a 0.75% hike. If that happens, then I guess the RBA would have to closely look what impact is this doing, because if they go too hard, then we actually stop spending and production kind of slows down, and then you've got this kind of recession period. I'm not quite sure. It'll be interesting to see where the RBA goes. I haven't got a crystal ball, but my eyes also will be on Thursday morning our time to see what the Fed does with their interest rate hikes. I mean, if we go up by 0.5, which is more likely, I mean, that's kind of the best case scenario, that we only move by 0.5 next Tuesday. Someone on a $600,000 mortgage would have seen their repayments jump up by a total of 1,091 since the first rate hike in May, if these forecasts are correct. So let me just clarify that again. 0.5 hike, if that happens, that's one of the predictions. Banks are saying another 0.5 hike. Some banks are saying the cash rate will reach 3.35 by the end of this year. If that happens, then that's what will happen with someone on a $600,000 mortgage. Their repayments will be up by over $1,000 since May.
Now, Effie, just on that one, there's so much we could talk about here, but one I've just noticed here is when we had rate cuts going on by the Reserve Bank, the banks, there was all a debate about whether they would pass on the cut, but banks haven't seemed to show hesitation when it comes to raising rates.
They never have shown hesitations to raising rates. And when you look at the other side of the fence, the saving deposits, unfortunately, it's not tit for tat. They're being very strategic on where they're actually increasing rates on savings accounts, because you've got to remember, these banks are seeing, they're flushed with cash. People have been saving. They actually don't want to increase interest rates across the board and pay out more because that's going to hit their profit margins. So where you see the banks putting interest rate hikes on saving accounts, they tend to be for new customers. They tend to be for the bonus rate, so, 4 months and then it goes back to their base rate. And term deposits are very selective onto where they're actually targeting. So unfortunately, no. When rates go up, they move pretty fast. When rates go down, it takes a while. And on savings accounts, it's definitely not tit for tat.
Well, it's great to catch up with you about this, Effie. We might talk to you again maybe after or around the time of that Reserve Bank meeting early next month, and we'll just see how fast the Reserve Bank's going to go.
See what pans out.
Thanks for joining us today,
lovely.
Effie.
Thank you.